this Christian vision of heaven and hell is just grotesque, I think. It's grotesque because people are being punished for something they have no control over. For a start, what culture you're born in, or all sorts. It's grotesque because the idea that you could be punished forever by a God of love is just incomprehensible. And it's grotesque because, I don't know about anyone else, but I can't imagine enjoying heaven much, knowing that the vast majority of people, or anyone, was in hell. That doesn't seem like heaven to me. That just feels like hell. So we all end up in hell. If one of us is in hell, and you love, everybody's in hell.
We're moving beyond a religious definition of where people are standing into more of a spiritual sense of it. In other words, fewer and fewer people are feeling that they have to say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, but more, I am someone who's going through a process of inner awakening. And
well, the church would want people to believe in a figure, a belief, a concept, right? Whereas the Gnostics, they said, no, it's direct knowledge. You have to know who you are directly through experience. You have to know I am God. You have to know something much larger than what the church was giving people.
Entonces, dentro de la cultura aymara, siempre primero el Apo es el sumo, el superior de todo el universo y de todos nosotros. Como ellos dicen Dios, de nosotros el Apo.
A direct experience of the divine, that can be emancipating. I mean, that is liberating, that is illuminating. Those are all some of the words that are used for this kind of an experience. And of course, illuminated and emancipated and free human beings are hard to control. And that might not be very convenient for hierarchical and abusive sorts of systems.
the present Catholic Pope, for instance, is almost like trying to go back in time. He's almost like trying to remove the effect of history or the development of understanding that we have about what's truth and what isn't true. It's almost like trying to go back to a position that might have been more appropriate centuries ago. I
think the Catholic Church, which is really just the Roman Empire, that's what became of the Roman Empire, that's what we're dealing with, is beginning to understand how under threat it is.
But certainly through the Church as an institution, the whole notion of mediating the relationship between man and the divine through an institution like the Church is in many ways outrageous and disempowering. It's a control mechanism.
Como dice, la Iglesia es como la madre del Dios. Nosotros también decimos, la Madre Tierra es como la Iglesia, que nos provee de todo.
I was teaching world religions because I feel called, and still do, that we need to move away from a fundamentalist attitude, any attitude of thinking that there's only one way of approaching God. I always felt that we need to have respect for each other's differences.
For the Gnostics, it's all about the discovery of the Christ within. And the Christ within is exactly what in the East would be called the Atman or the Buddha nature. It's that there is one awareness in everything, because we're all one. So the whole process for the Gnostics is about dying to the idea that we're all separate and antagonistic to each other, and waking up in love with each other.
It's like an orgasm, even, for example, is why even sexuality is such a big thing, is because in that moment you have a little taste of what it would be like to touch God. The ecstasy and the joy and the love.
Y por eso vemos que la parte espiritual es el guía de una persona. Una persona sin su cultura, sin su religión, no sería nada. Eso nos puede guiar a respetarnos entre nosotros y a corregir.
It's like knowing what you're doing every day, knowing why you get up in the morning and why you do anything. if we don't have a higher purpose, then it's nothing, right? There's no, it's kind of yuck. Yet if we have a purpose, like, okay, I offer this to something greater, so that everything we do has a greater purpose. So that then we're living at a higher level just by doing that alone. We don't have to run to India or the jungle, right?
Be the change that you want to see in the world. That's right. I think we have to begin there. We have to, instead of saying, why are our world leaders not embodying this consciousness, it's a better approach to say, how can I?
That's what Native American religion did for me, is acknowledge the sacredness of absolutely everything around us. And if we can learn to relate to everything around us in a sacred way, then we will also become sacred.
Gnostics are doing what they always do. It's what they're doing today. They're syncretizing. They're bringing together different human traditions and going, let's find where this is the same and how we can make it richer through our meeting, rather than polarize and say, no, that's us, that's them, we're in opposition. That's what literalists do. That's what we're seeing in the world today again. The more fundamentalist somebody is, the more it's an us and them world. And the more what I would call Gnostic someone becomes, the more it's not that, it's just us. And that's because the fundamental idea which underlies Gnosticism is that everything is one.
Aboriginal people would say, all sentient beings connected with that light, with that sacred Shakti. And if we as human beings recognize that, we wouldn't be so presumptuous. You know, we might learn from the dolphins and the whales how to be compassionate. When we think of how the dolphins and the whales have responded to our madness when we're trying to kill them, they give us sweetness. It's like Christ on the cross saying, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. We have that Christ-like vibration in the whales and the dolphins. As we try and murder them, that's the way they respond to us. So they can teach us if we have the humility to learn from them. But if we have the old Christian perspective that says, oh no, animals, anything other than humans are not endowed with the image of God, then we don't think that we can learn from them. That's absurd. Whereas Aboriginal peoples would say, oh no, the Great Spirit lives in all beings.
I know I know the way we are. If we don't see it, it can't be, right? But if we remember that everything we do on the inside, every time we get closer to our inner self, to God, we're helping others around us.
But the one thing that I think is the common thread that for us is a must-be is the vocation for service. The vocation to service and the vocation to help and to bring blessing onto the world.
It's interesting to look at the examples of single individuals like Terry Fox, like the Dalai Lama, that just have changed history. Yeah. We need such a person now. Someone who walks their talk, someone who has relentless courage and integrity. And of course the question always comes down to, what about you? You know, it's like God points the finger and says, well, if you're asking the question, then maybe you should go up to bat there.
And so we can either swim in the pain with everybody. I think Rumi, your favorite guy, said, wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. And that really struck me, because that's why we're in this thing. And to continue to, connect higher, but while we're here, wherever you stand, be the soul of that place.
But if actually the problem is just that we've got one mistaken idea. We think we're separate from each other. I think I'm me and you're you and that's it. And in reality we're not. In reality there's one of us. There's one awareness, the Christ, the Buddha nature, the Atman, whatever name you want to give that, doesn't matter. Dreaming itself or imagining itself or appearing to itself to be this whole glorious universe and meeting itself in all these other forms. if that's the reality, if that's then all we've got to do to solve our problems is change one idea. And that suddenly seems quite practical. We could change one idea. Change the idea we're separate, replace it with the understanding that we're not, that we're one. And you just think, well, and so the problem is the real problem is nothing more substantial than an idea. So if we could just, and then I think, well, maybe this could all change just like the Berlin Wall came down. Maybe we could just go, oh my God, the veil of separateness which divided us just came down.